here's Leon for you. Cairo had a million diversions, and Leon took advantage of every one of them. He relished being single, venturing out every night and not returning until dawn. He ambled elegantly through the city in constant search of entertainment, dining, dancing, and gambling were his great loves. And he wandered from restaurants to cafes to dance halls. It was 43, the height of World War II, and the streets and cinemas and night spots were crowded with British soldiers. Wherever he went, Leon stood out, a towering figure in expensive hand-tailored suits made of white sharkskin. The soft, shiny material was all the rage among Cairo's privileged classes. I should stop, by the way, and tell you that to this day, I've never really seen or felt white sharkskin. It's remained this very sort of mythical fabric in my mind, but it had very interesting audiences. You know, I divide them, and tonight's the exception, of course, but there's sort of the secular Upper West Side, Barnes and Noble, you know, Jewish intellectuals, I suppose, and then there's the, what I call the textile broker from Brooklyn. And these guys will come to my readings and they'll get very emotionally involved in this book. It's their story. And invariably, somebody will raise their hand and say, I can get you white sharkskin. And I'm still waiting. So that it does not exist. I am convinced of it. So anyway, Leon would stop and catch his breath only on Friday night, the Jewish Sabbath, because he took religion as seriously as his games and pastimes. Early on, Leon had figured out a way for these seemingly contradictory sides of his nature, his love of God and his love of pleasure, to coexist. He was a regular at temple Friday night and Saturday morning, but come Saturday night, his exuberant, frivolous life resumed and continued uninterrupted throughout the week. Well, he's not able to get Edith's attention, and he finally resorts to a stratagem. He sends her a note with a maitre d', and the note has only one line. I find you beautiful. Would it be possible for us to meet? And that's how the courtship begins. But this is the Middle East, and it's what I think in my mind is the Bazaar society, BA as well as BI, and he so that sort of it's a society where deals are being made all the time, and you have two desirable commodities, you know, an eligible, well-off gentleman and a sort of young, pretty educated single woman. And you've got Edith's mother there, and she insists on a kind of, she will not let Edith be the latest sort of toy for this man, and she insists on marriage. And sure enough, there is an engagement within weeks of the meeting at La Parisiana, and the wedding takes place. And again, for those of you who have seen my book or even flipped through it, you'll see that pictures play a particular role. You know, I guess most books have a kind of a clump of pictures together in an insert or two. And that was originally the time for Sharkskin as well. But I found after 2 years of research that I really didn't have very much. I only had maybe one picture of the major characters in the episode, one picture of my father in white sharkskin, one picture of me as an infant, one of my, you know, stern Syrian grandmother, and one wedding picture. But I've always thought it was a hell of a wedding picture, and it served as the frontispiece of this book. And it was taken by, of all people, amateurs, photographer. So I'll end tonight by reading you from the wedding and the picture. The name of the photographer was Weinberg, Jean Weinberg. Weinberg's, they go to the photo studio to have their portrait taken on the day of their wedding. And needless to say, Leon and Edith, of course, are my parents. Weinberg, who had worked at the court of Ataturk, was the most talented photographer in all of Egypt. Yet even he was worried when he positioned the couple side by side. The bride was so small that she risked being completely overshadowed by her husband. So Weinberg had an idea. He slid a small velvet footstool beneath Edith's feet, and it promptly vanished under yards and yards of lace and satin. The portrait came out so perfectly that he placed it at the center of his shop window in downtown Cairo, where it remained for months. He signed his name in black ink, like an artist who has produced a masterpiece. And it is indeed a wonderful shot. Leon has abandoned his trademark white suit in favor of a classic black tuxedo. He carries a top hat and white gloves and wears a sprig of lily of the valley in his lapel. And Edith, a mist of dark hair framing her features, smiles slightly as she holds a large bouquet of white flowers. The two are standing almost shoulder to shoulder. It is an illusion, a scene from the same movie that opened at the cafe, and no Selznick or Wilder could have scripted it better. This wartime romance, the last shot of the couple embracing as they ride their carriage around one of the most alluring cities in the world, a city touched by World War II, yet at the same time shielded from its ravages. Except it wasn't a movie, because Leon and Edith were my parents, and the after effects of their courtship would reverberate years later and thousands of miles away. The account of their first encounter in the spring of '43 would hold me enthralled long after I learned that much of what I treasured was make-believe, as illusory as their standing shoulder to shoulder in the photo. I held on to the glamorous image, even when all glamour had gone from their lives and mine, and colonial Cairo was no more, and Jewish Cairo was a distant memory, and we had been banished to a string of shabby hotels in Paris and New York, until finally ending up in a corner of Brooklyn, no wider than 10 blocks, where thousands of other refugees from the Levant had also fetched up. As we moved from country to country, city to city, I learned to find solace in the fable of my parents' love affair. I would ask my mother to tell me of the romantic encounter. I'd grill my father for details about that first meeting at La Parisienne. I find you beautiful. Would it be possible for us to meet? What had drawn him to Edith? Why had he decided to marry her? Like so much of the lore that surrounded my father, every facet of his life took on a sheen and luminescence akin to the garments he favored, so that I was never able to discern what was real and what had been artfully woven. I'll end this off by saying I finally went back to Egypt for this book after a multi-decade absence. I don't have any great rational explanation for why my family stayed away from Egypt for so long. Jews went back to visit, as you know, as early as the 80s and 90s, but not my family. It was almost like a sort of a psychological taboo to go. And when I returned, it's funny going back as a journal reporter, there was this sort of delegation from the government sort of waiting for me to welcome me back to Cairo. Why did you ever leave, they told me. And that they offered to take me anywhere I wanted to go, the pyramids or whatever. And I said, no, I want to go to Malik and Nasri Street. I couldn't because of the traffic. So my next choice was, as you can no doubt guess, I wanted to go to Brookies. And it was such a devastating disappointment that I'll just read you one more graph, and that's it. It seemed at first glance exactly as we'd left it, the stately structure with a delightful sign, Brookies and fanciful longhand, still dominated Solomon Pasha Square. Inside, the large room with tall ceilings and stately columns and pink walls and countless shelves had once promised a palace of childhood and adult pleasures. There were no customers inside. The shelves, once laden with distinctive pastries, were nearly all barren. The area in the front that had once housed a thriving take-out business had a forlorn, abandoned look to it. Someone was manning the old wooden cashier station, but there was nobody online. Like Cairo, like my family after Cairo, the famed establishment was all about decline and faded splendor. Thank you.